Right, it's there's not a whole pile going on in the GA world at the moment, understandably enough. So we've decided to come up with a bit of a concept just to keep people going, maybe get the juices flowing, have a bit of fun with it also. So the idea that myself and Michael Verney are going to run through here is basically trying to pick the best All Ireland winner from the last we'll say 16 years, the last 16 times that the competition has happened. So I've put it up there, the sort of the draw that we've looked at, pulled it out of a hat completely randomly, of course. So we're going to start off today with Galway 2017 against Kilkenny 2007. See which of the talk through the teams, which team was better, and then we'll put it out to a public vote. So we'll do it on Twitter, but also we'll leave a couple of comments after the YouTube video where you can click like on 2017 Galway on that comment, or like on 2007 Kilkenny if you prefer that. So you can see just in the rest of the draw there are 8 matchups in the last 16. 2019 Tip against 2005 Cork, 2015 Kilkenny, 2013 Clare, 2011 Kilkenny, 2006 Kilkenny, and so on and so forth. So you can read through it there. So that's obviously the gist of that sort of plan there. Michael, I think it's fair to say that we're going to be in for a couple of rounds.
Haha, there's nothing sure. This kind of reminds me in the brackets and everything. It's like the king of the ring back in the day. Only the strong survive.
Well, I've seen a couple of people take aim at you over your constant references to wrestling. You're not going to back down, are you?
No, most definitely not. But there's some interesting ties and even potential ties that you can see in the next round. And like, just the Kilkenny is obviously gonna pop up an awful lot, but like there were certain Kilkenny teams that were an awful lot better than other Kilkenny teams, no more than some of the Tip teams as well. So it'll be interesting to see even like our own thoughts on what way it goes. You're obviously going to be pro Tip, and I'm going to be pro Kilkenny. But it'll be interesting to see what way it works out. There's definitely some interesting matchups in the opening rounds as well, but it's going to be really interesting as we move along.
The dominance of Kilkenny means they feature 8 times in this. Tipperary are in there 3 times. You're looking at Clare, Limerick and Galway, and a couple of Cork also. So there's a nice bit of variety there. I don't think I've left anyone out, but there's a nice bit of variety. Let's look at the Kilkenny team first of all, and the final team that they had against Limerick in 2007. It wasn't exactly a close game here, but just I'll run through the team quickly, and then you can give a comment on it and how strong you think they were. So in goals, PJ Ryan, Michael Kavanagh, Noel Hickey and Jackie Tyrrell. It's a strong full back line. Tommy Walsh, Brian Hogan and JJ Delaney. Then you had Derek Ling and Cha Fitzpatrick. Half forward line of Willie O'Dwyer, Martin Comerford, Owen Larkin, and then Eddie Brennan, Henry Shefflin and Taggy Fogarty, who of course didn't win the Dancing with the Stars the other night. But of course it's been tough for Kilkenny to win national championships lately, and they were relying heavily on that Dancing with the Stars.
Jeez, you won't get any thanks for that. Just going down through that team, like, geez, it's fierce hard to find holes in that. It's so hard to find holes in that. And you're looking at the bench and you're looking what came on, win. Like, it wasn't exactly got there the hardest way. With all due respect to my own county, like there was a fair trimming to Offaly in the Leinster semi-final. There was a fair trimming to Wexford in the Leinster final. They beat Galway in the quarter-final, give Wexford a decent trimming in the semi-final again, and then beat Limerick in the final. And Henry Shefflin kind of limped off in that game as well, and they still won quite convincingly. So you'd have to question whether it was really put up to them that year. The traditional, did they beat a Cork? Did they beat a Tip? Did they beat, the really strong, a Waterford at that time as well? So did they beat any counties that were really flying at that time? To be honest, I would say, like, those 5 they played, none of those counties would have been realistic All-Ireland contenders. Definitely not at the outset of the year. Obviously, Limerick got to the final. But no Tip, no Cork, no big powerhouses to win to lift the All-Ireland trophy.
Yeah, and of course, just a reference back to that Offaly game as well. You were injured at the time, but you were doing hurleys on the sideline. Offaly went in behind at half time, ended up getting absolutely hammered by 14 points. But the home, you gave the team a standing ovation at half time before getting absolutely pasted. Not a great look.
Interesting. Yeah. And then you're it's what's it called? It's like selective memory, or is it just like playing, like just making things up? Like,
No, that's actually
yeah,
from an
we
Ian O'Riordan
lose
article.
in a half time.
But that was I just read an article
Right.
from Ian O'Riordan from the Times about it. So yeah, you did do that. Do you know what though? Let's jump on.
At half time, we what ushered them in at half time.
The article says that Offaly went off at half time to a standing ovation.
Oh, sorry, I thought you meant that Offaly gave Kilkenny a standing ovation. I was like, what
No,
is
you've been
going
doing
on
that
here?
ever since.
We probably did, because Damien Murray got a penalty or a 21 before we were kind of cock a hoop going in at half time, and then the usual crack after the break where Kilkenny just put the foot in the throttle. But yeah, that was a brilliant Kilkenny team. Don't get me wrong. And as I said, going through the team, it's very hard to pick holes in it. But I would just question the strength of that All Ireland win. Some All Ireland wins are a lot harder than others, and I would question how hard that All Ireland was won.
Well, let's
Like,
look at
should
Galway.
Henry Shefflin, if they were playing someone else, should Henry Shefflin going off in the first half, that should have been a game changer. I think if that was against Tipper or Cork, that would have been a game changer. It wasn't a game changer against Limerick. They still won the game comfortably. And that maybe would tell you something about the level of opposition that they had that year and in that final.
Yeah, when Kilkenny fans talk to me and go on about losing in 2010, they always have that excuse that Shefflin went off injured, and they roll it out regularly. They seem to have an excuse every time Tipperary win an All-Ireland. But anyway, before we dig into that, you've talked about the quality of opposition that Kilkenny faced in 2007. Let's look at who Galway faced in 2017. Actually, no, we'll just run through their team quickly. First of all, Colm Callan in goals. He obviously let in a small bit of a howler that day, I think it's fair to say. Adrian Toohey, Dahi Burke, John Hanbury, then a half backline, brilliant half backline of Pádraig Mannion, Grode, McInerney, Aidan Hart. Then you've Johnny Cohn and David Burke midfield. David Burke ended up man of the match in that All Ireland. Joseph Cooney, Joe Canning, and Johnny Glynn. And then inside forward line of Conor Whelan, Conor Cooney, and Cathal Mannion. That's a fairly strong team. I think it goes without saying.
Is that one of the most physically imposing teams you've ever heard? Like, they've all their big guns, all their big guys. Like, look at the forward line. Joseph Cooney, 6'3", Canning the same. Glynn, go again. Conor Whelan's probably a bit smaller, but he's an absolute tank. Conor Cooney's a big man. Mannion is probably about 6'2". It's just such a big, robust team. Like, I would have loved to see that Galway team go up against that Kilkenny team, because Kilkenny they obviously weren't a small team either. They were big, physical, robust team. You hear all the managers talking now, anytime they play Galway, they're expecting this physical challenge that they wouldn't get off most other teams. I would have loved to see that Galway team go toe to toe with that Kilkenny team. Two big kind of brutes of teams.
Let's just look at the route that Galway had to the final that year. So we'll just hover over it here. Galway absolutely pasted Dublin in the first round, 228 to 117. Conor Cooney's 1-3 and Jason Flynn's 1-2 stood out that day. Then
just on that, remember Canning set up Flynn for what would have been one of the greatest goals I reckon ever scored. Canning put a ball from the sideline into Flynn. Flynn, unbelievable control and a snapshot, but he put it over the bar rather than into the net. It was class. It would have been one of the great goals if he'd gotten it.
Okay, and then just to jump on, handy win against your Offaly, 33 points to 111. Fairly heavy win over Wexford, 29 points to 117. Then that very tight and tense semi-final against Tipperary, 22 points to 118. That late winner from Joe Canning, of course, the famous photos where he's smiling from ear to ear as it's flying over the bar, and why wouldn't he? And then, of course, the All-Ireland final win against Waterford. So all told, is it a great Galway team? This is a team that didn't score a goal in their last 4 games.
I think that even kind of heightens just how good they were. They didn't need to score a goal in their last 4 games to win an All-Ireland. Has any other team in living memory been able to do that? Not to the best of my recollection. Obviously, they beat a tip along the way. They beat a Wexford side that were resurgent, and they beat a good Waterford side in the final, albeit Waterford haven't been back to that stage since. Maybe there's been some mitigating circumstances in that. But I think the fact that they didn't need to score a goal in the last 4 games will kind of tell you just how good that Galway side was. That's my own personal opinion anyway.
I'm just looking through the teams and I'm wondering, does that Galway team have the same level of kind of all-time star power? Like, look at the half-back line of Kilkenny. It includes Tommy Walsh, JJ Delaney, and obviously always the anchor was Brian Hogan. But Tommy Walsh and JJ Delaney will arguably be 2 of the top 5 Kilkenny players of all time. Some people might even say among the best 2. Eddie Brennan won 5, probably his greatest day in a Kilkenny jersey. Hard to argue against that, I'd imagine. Chaff Fitzpatrick, probably when he was up near his very, very best. Derek Ling was a powerhouse at the time. It's probably very, very hard to find any weakness on that team.
I don't think there are any weaknesses in it, to be honest with you. Eddie was famous man of the match award to Brian Cody, which is just, it still baffles me.
That annoys me.
And I've said it to Eddie, and like, you can tell, like, obviously he's loads of All Irelands, loads of All Stars, and that it shouldn't really bother him, but it definitely bothers him a small bit. Like, he would have been the first player in history, to the best of my recollection, to have got man of the match in successive All Ireland finals, which would have been definitely in living memory anyway, which would have been unbelievable. Now, I get what you're saying about all-time greats and those Kilkenny names, but if we're taking this year on year, I don't think Kilkenny were at their best in 07, and maybe that's partly to do with the fact that they didn't need to be at their best, but I don't think they were at their best. I think Galway were fairly outstanding that year. A bit of a blip against Tip in the semi-final, not a blip, but they were probably below what they had been up until that, and I thought they always, while it was very tight, I felt they always had Waterford at arm's length in the final, in fairness to them. And if they hadn't been for that Colin Callan goal that you said earlier, they probably would have had them even more at arm's length, and they pulled away. And even the impact of their bench, Niall Burke coming in and getting 2 points, Jason Flynn coming in and getting 2 points as well, that was kind of, they were in their pomp. And the year after, even, we were saying, like, Galway look unbeatable. Like, that's how good they carried that form into the next year as well. I think that's the best. Obviously, they were ending a famine as well, a 29-year famine as well, which I think puts even more significance on that All-Ireland win, because they had all the pressure and all the expectation that comes with that.
That actually is a fair point. Actually, just while I think of it, do you know Kevin Heffernan, when he was Dublin football manager, was given the award of Footballer of the Year, which is absolutely insane and even worse than what happened with Cody getting man of the match in the All-Ireland final. For
a man of the match award, it's kind of like half forgivable. Footballer of the Year, not so much. No, not, that's bizarre, really. But this is the great bizarre world of the GA that we live in.
What about Joe Canning in this sort of mock All-Ireland final matchup? He would have been, well, the way he played against Waterford, Philip Mahoney went and marked him. Started off the game like a house on fire, and I would say from that point on, then Philip Mahoney probably edged the battle. Where would he have gone in this sort of matchup here? I'm just looking at the Kilkenny team again, and you're looking at maybe, would he go in on Noel Hickey? Would he try and go in on Brian Hogan and try and drift off him? What way would you be looking at that?
Yeah, he actually started the All-Ireland final wing forward, and I think he got the first score of the game, I think, to the best of my knowledge.
He did, yeah.
Be interesting, yeah. See, like, Brian Hogan was always the centre. How much space Canning actually would have gotten if he'd tried to play that kind of Roman role around there. You know, Kilkenny were so good at, like, Hogan protected 2, 3 and 4, and the keeper obviously, but 8 and 9 protected Brian Hogan. Willie O'Dwyer, Martin Comerford, Owen Arkin protected the midfield. They were the first. It was a real kind of concertina kind of effect. Everything dropped back, and they were the first kind of team that we saw doing that. It'd be interesting to see whether Canning would get much space in that centre forward role against that Kilkenny team, who really had, there was no pockets that you could fall into against them. They seemed to have every kind of little area kind of cordoned off. So it'll be interesting to see. Maybe they put him in full forward. I remember they got a bit of joy with him full forward in the 2012 Leinster final. He got a goal off Jackie Tyrrell when he was isolated in full forward. Jackie switched from corner to full. But it'd be interesting to see. Yeah, that's one of the most interesting kind of matchups, really, isn't it? Any of the other ones?
Well,
Yeah,
just to jump onto that Canning one, he also got a goal against JJ Delaney in the 2012 drawn All Ireland final. I think James Regan made a burst and set that up for him. Other matchups that I'd be interested in seeing is, what if Johnny Glynn went in full forward on Noel Hickey, and then probably one of the best matchups of all, Dahi Burke against Henry Shefflin. Let's assume Henry Shefflin doesn't get injured, but if Henry Shefflin was in full forward, Dahi Burke against Henry Shefflin, that'd be tasty.
oh, that would be tasty because Shefflin's obviously a big, physically imposing man, but Dottie Burke would try and stamp his kind of physicality on that matchup. And it'd be like, remember Dottie Burke and John Conlon going toe to toe in the 18 semi-finals, like two bulls, it's almost like two matadors in between them, like almost. It was unbelievable. And Burke is the best modern day fullback that we know, obviously 4-time All-Star, 3 of them at fullback, I think, or definitely 1 at wingback, maybe 1 at cornerback, 2 at fullback. That would be a really, really interesting duel. Like, I'd say you could name on one hand the amount of lads that have gotten the better of Dottie Burke throughout his inter-county career. So that'd be a really, really interesting matchup. Shefflin was always able to find a way, no matter who he was marking, invariably as well. So yeah, there's some fairly mouth-watering kind of matchups there, and it's always interesting looking back, comparing generations and comparing teams. But definitely Shefflin and Dottie Burke is one that would definitely stand out.
So we're going to have to call it then. I do agree with the whole weight of history that Galway had to end the 29-year famine. At the same time, Kilkenny were going for back-to-back. Yeah, Galway no goal in the last 4 games, but then again, Kilkenny would probably won that All-Ireland in second gear because Leinster was so pathetic at the time that they didn't have to get out of first gear to get through it. All the Munster teams were battering the heads off each other, so Limerick had to play a tough Munster, lost the final to Waterford. Then they came through the back door and beat a Waterford team that was so tired from playing a replay against Cork. I think the other teams were punched out before they ever got near Kilkenny, so I'm going to go with Galway just about on this one. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, Galway just about. The weight of history, the fact that they didn't need to score a goal, and the fact that when you go back through that team, I think it's very, very hard to find holes in it. I think it would have been an unbelievable matchup. I just don't think Kilkenny were in their pomp. I think they were getting towards it in a year or two time maybe, but I just think Galway would have edged that. It would have been an outrageously physical battle, but I just think Galway would just edge it for me.
Okay, and don't forget, people, vote on the poll that'll be up for 24 hours on Twitter, and click like on the comments on YouTube that we'll put after the video also. Thanks very much for that, Michael.